Hey, what's good? It's Marshall Mathers the fourth here. Well, I made it to 23 years old as of today, February 12th of 2020, and I never had a girlfriend. I'm still a virgin, and this probably out of any reason that or any reasons that I suffered because of this definitely has to be the most painful, miserable, agonizing, tormenting, torturing feeling that I've had to experience. Being at the age of 23 years old and still a virgin and never having a girlfriend. And same goes for any guy of any race. As long as he's 20 years old, never had a girlfriend and still virgin, or older, his chances of ever having a girlfriend, or for that matter a wife, and ever finding and whatever his true soulmate, if he's lucky enough, just goes way down. This is what statistics have shown. This is what research has shown of any man of any race. If he's 20 years old, still a virgin, and never had a girlfriend, or older, his chances of ever getting a girlfriend, or for that matter a wife, just goes so low. It just goes so far down. And it's probably not going to happen. And that's why there's so many people who have sex underage before marriage in their teens. And you know what? I think that shit is evil, and it pisses me off. And I do think it should be illegal, and I do think it should be considered immoral and an abomination. But of course it's not, because of our culture and our society of the country that we live in, of America. It's deemed as normal or okay or whatever, and I just think it's bullshit. And you know, when it comes to women and their expectations and demands that they have of any man that wants to get with them of any race, their expectations and demands are just so crazy, insane, high, and just ridiculous. Like, I mean, you would not believe how many YouTube videos I've seen of girls, and even elsewhere on the internet, doesn't really even matter where, just the fact that girls will say that they want a guy who's confident, who has self-esteem, who's outgoing, who's popular, who is successful, and who's fit, or at least thin, who's taller than them, and also a guy who's of course strong emotionally, mentally, and of course physically, so that he can have the strength physically to protect and defend his wife and kids from anyone or any sort of harm or danger, and then strong emotionally and mentally to be a powerful leader in the household, and a powerful leader for his children to look up to and take on after and be inspired and influenced by, and a strong, powerful role model for his kids to listen to and respect and obey and all that other shit. And when it comes to a guy who's emotionally and mentally weak, or physically weak, then obviously he can't take care of a wife when he can hardly take care of himself, and for that matter kids. And you know, I honestly do think that one of the main reasons why women of our society, of our culture, and even not just in this country, but in countries elsewhere, I feel, have the expectations and demands that they do when it comes to a guy, because it's the way society is. It's the way society has been made and set up. Like, when you think of our society has the same exact expectations and demands of mankind. Like, they think that a man should be strong emotionally, mentally, and physically, and strong emotionally and mentally so that he won't get hurt and he won't let anything faze him, no matter how much he gets picked on or bullied or harassed throughout his life. He won't make a big deal about it, and it won't really harm him that much emotionally and mentally, or at all, if he's emotionally and mentally strong. And if he's physically strong, then he can obviously do a lot more than a guy who's physically weak or emotionally and mentally weak. And when it comes to a guy who's emotionally and mentally weak and physically weak, society makes fun of guys like that and likes to ridicule them and put them down and just crush them even more than they already are. And that's why women treat guys who are emotionally and mentally weak and physically weak like dog shit, because society does. And, you know, I would love to have a wife who is loyal and faithful, but also one who has morals. And I would love more than anything to have a wife who would love me unconditionally, no matter how I am as a person. And just because I'm shy and not confident and don't have self-esteem and am not outgoing and am not popular doesn't mean I'm a freak. And just because I chose to isolate myself from people and community doesn't mean I'm a weirdo, or I don't know, like, women just have all these assumptions in advance how they feel about guys who are shy, or guys who are nice, or guys who are not confident, who don't have self-esteem, who aren't outgoing, who don't have pride, or who aren't emotionally and mentally strong and physically strong, is just the most unattractive thing when it comes to pretty much any and all women, regardless of their race. And, you know, I think it's interesting that I mentioned earlier in this video that that I would love to have and definitely want a wife who would be loyal and faithful to me, so I would never have to worry about her cheating on me and just driving me crazy, and one who would have, of course, morals, because that reminds me of this book I read a long time ago, and if none of you have read it, I suggest you definitely give it a read, because it's a really interesting and fascinating book, and it's titled Gangsters Without Borders. It's a 90s book, and the guy who wrote the book, he pretty much interviewed, hung out with, and just really researched the gang MS-13 Mara Salvatrucha, and he wanted to really get to know them on a very deep and personal level. So he literally spent a lot of time with them. He got to know them and, like, inside and out, and what they were about, how they lived their lives and all that. And one of the most interesting things, he asked the men of that gang, or in that gang, what kind of a woman they want to marry. And they all said that they want a woman who is loyal, faithful, and who has morals. And they also said a woman who would visit me while I'm in prison. And the guy who did research on that specific gang, who wrote the book titled Gangsters Without Borders, he said, what you want is a Christian wife. And it's kind of funny because they didn't say, oh, I want a Christian wife, I want a religious wife or whatever. They just simply said that they wanted a woman who was loyal, faithful, moral, and one who would visit them while in prison, while they themselves would be in prison, or if they were, or whatever. But the sad thing is, when it comes to women who are loyal and faithful and who have morals, chances are highly likely that you're not ever going to find women who are loyal and faithful and also have morals if you try to look outside of Christian religious women. Because when it comes down to it, those are probably the only women who would even have a chance at being loyal and faithful to their husband, to their man. And of course be moral and all that other good shit, and do good stuff for him, like cook for him, clean for him, if he comes home from a hard day of work, like make him a bath or whatever, and just do just really good, nice, kind things for her man. If she truly deeply loves him and cares about him, she'll love him whatever way he is, and she will stick by his side, and she will live with him through the good and the bad. And you know, when it comes to women who aren't loyal and faithful and don't have morals, like when I think of most women, for example, I feel like, and I think any and all men could probably realize this too, that you can tell a lot about a woman simply, even without even being in a relationship with her, without interacting with her yourself, but just looking at her and observing a woman from a distance. You can tell a lot about a woman when you see the way they dress, the way they act, what they talk about, what kind of people they hang out with, and you can tell whether they would be a loyal, faithful, moral wife, or just a complete whore, and one who would constantly cheat on you and just be an all-around horrible wife, and one who would just drive her husband insane. And you know, I think it's also interesting because one thing also in this book, Gangsters Without Borders, is the fact that the MS-13 Mara Salvatrucha gang did hang out with hoes. They had a lot of girls who were in fact hoes that hung out with them, and they hung out with those hoes, but they weren't like interested in like marrying them. They didn't really like them. They weren't that fond of those kinds and types of women. They were disgusted, if anything, with them. They didn't really find any attraction to them whatsoever. And it's also kind of interesting and funny, when I think of most people, I would think that most people would probably think that's exactly what gangsters would want. I mean, these are gangsters that are considered and labeled the most dangerous gang in the world, or at least one of the most dangerous gangs in the world, being that of MS-13 Mara Salvatrucha. And yet, in this book, even these actual gangsters said to the guy that they want a woman who's loyal, faithful, moral, and who would visit them while in prison. These are gangsters saying that, and I think that's dope as fuck, especially coming from gangsters. I mean, you would think that they would just want whores. You would think that they wouldn't mind marrying or trying to like live with hoes or whatever as like a wife, having a wife that's a hoe or a whore or whatever. But no, they don't like them. They're not attracted to them. They're not into them. They're not drawn to them. And it's just interesting how that guy who did the research on that gang like concluded that what they wanted, and they didn't even realize it, was a Christian religious woman. And you know, there also was another research done. This is a completely different research that my mom actually told me about, and I do believe her. I don't know when it happened or where it happened, and I don't know the people who did this research. I just know like simply the story of what the research was about. And there were these researchers who took a group of women and they pretty much tested them to try to see like what kind of like traits and characteristics and whatnot are they looking in a man, like looking for in a man. And in this research, these researchers concluded that pretty much these women, what they were really saying that they wanted was psychopaths, because they said that they wanted a guy who's confident, who has self-esteem, who's charming, who's a bad boy or a bad guy or whatever, and who's outgoing and who's successful and all this other shit. And you know what? What's crazy is psychopaths, like actual for real psychopaths, have all those traits and more. Like psychopaths are extremely charming, very confident, they have self-esteem, they're very outgoing, and they do even come off as kind, nice, sweet, and just like make and have really good friendships with people, because they're really good at tricking, fooling, and deceiving people. And I've seen all these YouTube videos of, one thing about psychopaths too is that they even can be like managers and business owners, or for that matter even rich, not just like successful in the workforce and whatnot, being managers and business owners possibly, but if they're business owners, chances are highly likely they're rich and they're successful, even like money wise, and they're successful people wise, because they can really reel in people, they can really lure people in to their trap. And in these YouTube videos I saw, it even indicated that even when they commit a crime, even one as heinous as murder, they can get away with it, because nobody would ever suspect or think of a guy who's confident, has self-esteem, who's outgoing, who's charming, who is so friendly, or at least comes off as that, and who's nice and kind and all that other shit, be capable of something like that. It would just never click in people's minds that, oh, that guy definitely would be capable of that. They would never imagine a guy who has all those traits and characteristics and whatnot being capable of that. And yet those are the kinds and types of guys that girls are attracted to. And even when girls are attracted to bad guys, I think that's really fucking crazy, because it's like you're attracted to a guy who probably, if anything, will abuse the fuck out of you, both verbally and physically, and yet, for still some odd reason, girls and women are still attracted to those kinds and types of guys. They still lust after them, they still want them, they still crave them, even when these guys, these kinds and types of guys, even do really heinous crimes to other people and even to women, and yet women will still choose to be attracted to those kinds and types of guys. And then when it comes to guys who are nice or shy or whatever, they treat those guys like absolute dog shit and just walk all over them and just destroy guys like that emotionally and mentally, and just break the hearts of so many guys who are nice or who are shy or whatever, or who just aren't confident and don't have self-esteem, and who are not outgoing, who are not popular, who are not successful, who don't have things that other people have, who aren't what's considered or deemed normal. And when guys who are shy or whatever don't fit in and don't feel like they belong anywhere, those women only make it worse, much worse for guys like that. And guys who are usually shy, a lot of times already are thinking about like getting married and wanting to have a wife, even by the time they get into like fucking high school. But because they don't have the confidence and the self-esteem and the cool clothes and the popularity and the successfulness in life and the certain accomplishments that society expects and demands of them, and all this other shit, and same with women, they will not be loved or cared about or accepted or respected or anything like that by women or society or anyone for that matter. And it's just, I don't know, it's a sad fucking world we live in. And I just wanted to make this video and pretty much just to say that I'm 23 years old as of today, February 12th of 2020, and I'm still a virgin, never had a girlfriend, and it's just broken me so much emotionally and mentally. And you know, if I were able to find my true soulmate, she would love me deeply, regardless of how I would be. Even if I weren't the best looking, even if I am not confident and don't have self-esteem, even if I'm not popular or successful or anything like that, she would still love me for who I am. She would love me unconditionally, and that's the kind of type of woman I want. And I feel at the end of the day, I think that's the woman, or the woman most guys would want. Even gangs want that kind of woman. Anyway, I just wanted to make a video about that. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. I'm out.